This is John Jackson Miller, writer of Star Wars comics and novels, and you're listening to Star Wars with Stevie B. May the Force be with you.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another show. I got Mr. Scott Johnson with me here today. There he is. Pretty excited for this. He recently kind of started posting some videos on YouTube about his Star Wars Expanded Universe collection. He's got some rare gems, and he talks about them a little bit. Plus, he's been around since the beginning. He's been reading these books since they've been coming out. He's appeared on other podcast channels. Matt Wilkins. He recently just did an episode with Quinlan Voss on collecting. So that was really interesting. But I'm excited to have you here, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a privilege to be on. You've had a lot of great guests so far. Hope to tell my story. Hope it's a little bit interesting, or if people find it somewhat interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I've been in the expanded universe for a long time, really since 1996. So I'm eager to tell my story and get this documented for the world to see. You know.
Yeah, it's truly an honor to be able to do this, and just getting to meet you and all the other folks that I've had on. That's a privilege to me. You know, that's why I started doing this, and I hope everyone that watches likes what we're doing here. It's just great fans telling stories, content creators, collectors, things over the years that you don't even know that happened. I'm learning. I learn almost every day from these guys. So yeah, I'm excited to talk down and get it in with you and get it out there for everyone to see, man. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And we were chatting the last couple of days, and there's a few other interests that we kind of share too that maybe we'll get in, racing and music and so on. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But let's get right into it, my friend. And why don't you tell us how your interest in the Star Wars?
Okay, so I'm really having to think back on this, and I don't always know what comes before what chronologically, but I started to think about this last night, and I think my introduction started around, I don't know, when I was about seven or eight. I kind of knew what Star Wars was in the pop culture. I had seen references to it in other things. I hadn't seen the movie. There was really no way of seeing the movie prior to the special edition because it wasn't on TV as it is on cable in modern times. But I saw, references to it in other shows and that, and I thought Star Wars would be something that I would be interested in if I just had a way of seeing the whole film, right? I've talked to other people. I was like, what's Star Wars about? And they say, oh, well, that's Darth Vader, and that's Luke Skywalker. And they didn't spoil anything. I just knew very general facts about it. But I was like, how do I find a way to watch the film? And really, the only way of doing that was going to a video store, VHS, rental store, and renting the films. But I was so young, 7 or 8. Like when you go to those stores like Blockbuster and that, you wanted to rent video games. So every time I went there, I always forgot about it. I always rented a video game instead. And I finally had my opportunity to get introduced to the film around 1995. They had a promotion for Applejack cereal. And on the back of that, you'd send in some box tops and maybe $3 for shipping. And they'd send you the making of Star Wars, which was a VHS film. It gave an overview of how the film was made, had some interviews with the actors, George Lucas, and it really told you an overview of the film. It wasn't the movie, the New Hope per se, but it told you the gist of it, right? All the major scenes. There was a little commentary on that. So I learned enough of what Star Wars was at that point. And then I'm also the oldest of 4 kids. So, my little sisters, my little brother, they'd get these Star Wars coloring books, and that would tell you like more characters from the films, more scenes and that. And I kind of got introduced to Star Wars that way, even though I hadn't seen the film proper, like in its entirety. Goosebumps books were also a big thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, just the kids on my block were a couple years older than me. And I guess like 7 years old, you start to read, and then 8, you definitely like start reading books on your own. And I wasn't quite at that point yet. I think I was still like maybe seven years old. And these kids collected the Goosebumps books. They had trading cards. They had, fan club, like little tattoos, stickers, fun things like that. And I remember when I first started reading, when I first started picking up the books, I picked up the Goosebump books because those were the cool kids
The,
thing to do, right? I
the
wanted
in
to,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. So I wanted to be, imitate, the older kids on my block and that, and trade with them and things like that. And when I went to Barnes and Noble, I remember going there. I think I was in third grade. I wanted to get a specific Goosebump book, but it wasn't there on the shelf. But right over on the shelf next to it was the Jedi Prince series. So the young reader series, it's 6-book series starting with the Glove of Darth Vader. I didn't know anything about it at that point. I thought it was a series similar to Goosebumps where they had numbers 1 through 6, and I didn't know there was any chronological order that you had to read it in. I thought you could just pick up book 5 similar to like the Goosebumps series, and jump
it's
right.
its own story.
Yeah, and jump right in. I didn't know it was connected at that point, but I said, "Oh, well, it's Star Wars. Yeah, I'd like to know more about that." And let me pick that up. So I looked through the covers there, and the Glove of Darth Vader. I just happened to get the first one because I found that the most interesting. And yeah, that was my first introduction to Star Wars EU. I actually started reading the EU before I saw the films in their entirety. So that was really helpful. And what helped me out is the first couple pages in the Glove of Darth Vader tells a summary of basically the classic trilogy events. So that's how I knew like the Emperor and some of these characters that weren't really touched on in the other materials that I saw. And I was confused a little bit. Like I didn't know Lando that well. And I thought maybe the Emperor was a good guy. I didn't really
That's crazy.
get all the details at that point. But once I started reading the Jedi Prince series, man, I wanted to know more, right? So it just went on from there. I remember reading the Shadows of the Empire Junior novel when it came out in 1996. And then from there, I thought I was done. There's no more Star Wars books. And I asked my dad, like, there's nothing else for me to read. I guess I got to go back to Goosebumps, right? And he says, no, there's more Star Wars books. And he shows me the adult section, which was in a different section of the Barnes and Noble store, right? And there you have Heir to the Empire. There you have the Kevin J. Anderson trilogy, Jedi Academy trilogy, right? And I looked through those, and by that point, I knew to get book 1 of the series, right? It was a coincidence I started with Glove of Darth Vader, but I knew I was looking through the various trilogies, the Corellian trilogy, the Black Fleet Crisis. I almost got Heir to the Empire, but I ended up getting Jedi Search because I thought that cover looked very interesting. Yes. You had the Death Star prototype. I was like, what is that? And you had this female Imperial officer, Admiral Dalla. Like I didn't know who she was, but oh man, that looks interesting. And then you have the Falcon crashed on the surface of Kessel, and then Lando's like on the spine of the book looking crazy, like he's like, oh my gosh, the Falcon crashed. And then you have Luke in a stance very similar to Obi-Wan in A New Hope when he sacrificed himself. I was like, oh man, maybe Luke dies in this, So the possibilities were racing in my head. I was like, I need to read this. So I started reading that. It took me a while to pick that up. I remember I started reading it. I was like, this is a little boring. There was a lot of words at that point. I was probably about 9 or 10, maybe 10. And I remember I struggled words with protege, Kip Duran was Luke's protege. I didn't know what that meant, right?
Yeah.
It was a little advanced for me at the time, but I struggled through it. I eventually got through that trilogy and moved on through the rest of the Bantam era. So I mean that's the gist of how I generally started. But I genuinely started reading the EU prior to even seeing the films.
And that's wild to me. Just trying to fathom that right now. You got hooked on the books of the whole story before really diving into the films. That's a first, I think, for someone that I've talked to that it happened that way, as far as I know. That's crazy. But, you're right, though. I didn't realize there was, on my journey so far, I didn't realize there was so much expanded universe, okay? So, the Jedi Prince series and such. I had no idea about that. When I was a kid, I was a Goosebumps kid. The covers grabbed you. It had the Goosebumps was all bumpy. It was just a cool series for everyone to read. And they were they were kind of quick reads, you know what I mean? The font was bigger, little chapters, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I had no idea back then. I kick myself now because some of these books, as you know, are hard to find. You know what I mean? And especially you want to get good copies of them. But jumping back to in the beginning, you said the cereal, Apple Jacks,
Mhm.
box toppers sending in for that VHS tape. I remember stuff like that too, man, and that was cool. I don't think they do that much anymore.
No, I mean there was not much prior to the special edition. There was not a good way to get introduced to Star Wars. I know fans that are older than me that had the Ewoks cartoons, had the Droids
Yep.
cartoons, or had some of the West End Games material. But like early mid '90s, I mean there wasn't a lot. I think the VHS tapes, there was a set of VHS tapes that came out in 1993, but they were low print. You couldn't really get them. I mean, they were kind of expensive during that time, VHS tapes, and you kind of had to rent them from a store. That was really the only way to get them. And, it was, they had Halloween costumes and things like that, but there was no way to really get into it fully.
Right. So how long do you remember how long that the length of the tape was? Was it like maybe a little 15-minute documentary or half an hour or something?
It was maybe 50 minutes. Yeah. I think it's on YouTube now. The Apple Jacks, I was looking at the details because I wasn't sure quite what year it came out. It said 1995. I feel like maybe it was towards the end of 1995 that it came out. But when they released it for the back of the cereal box for that promotion, they actually changed some of the voiceovers on that, which I thought was interesting.
Oh,
so
cool.
you have your whole like home video collecting the different variants. That all that plays into it. And I haven't really watched it since then, but from what I've seen on YouTube, it's very familiar. Like I remember parts of it word for word just because I listened to it. I watched it so many times, you kind of pick that up, especially as a young kid,
Right. Yeah, that's cool. And VHS tapes were expensive. I know we're roughly around the same age. And I was fortunate enough. My aunt worked at a VHS store and was really cool, a movie club. So we got a lot of different things. And then later on, you got like the dual VHS player where you can like put a tape in and record a tape.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody, the cat's out of the bag now. We're way beyond that. But I actually had all three of the films on one VHS tape. We slowed it. Yeah, there was tricks to do that. So it was really cool. But anyway, so you got into the EU, well, the expanded universe prior to the film. So like after you started reading and you read Jedi Search, like did you like, I gotta watch these movies now and kind of see where all this plays out here?
Well, I knew from the very start I had to watch the films. It was just a matter of how do I do that, right? The way I was able to do it is, although I didn't see the special editions in theaters, there was a big media campaign leading up to that. There was extra little scrapbooks. I remember going to the Scholastic Book Fair, in third grade and seeing these like scrapbooks to the Galactic Empire, Rebel Alliance. It told you more and more about the films. And eventually, when the special editions were released on VHS tape, I got it that Christmas. So I was able to watch the films in their entirety. And by that point, I basically knew everything except seeing the films themselves, in their final form. But yeah, man, that was a journey. Man. That was a journey. I kind of went at it completely backwards than most people probably find it. And it was tough back then. It was definitely due to circumstances of that time period.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Absolutely. It's just that just boggles my mind still that so when you were watching the films, Christmas, great time to receive that too, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're in school, you get Christmas break, now you're watching a movie. Santa Claus is coming. So like, was there anything that really jumped out at you, like your first memory of the films? You know what I mean?
Cloud City really jumped out at me. I hadn't seen that many stills from it, and it just the whole environment. I was like, man, that's really cool. Like with the sunset and the clouds, and you have this like space station type thing. It's not quite the Death Star, right? It doesn't have any weapon. It's just, I was like, man, that's a very unique environment that really struck out to me. And the other thing was the Emperor. Like I didn't really know a lot of the Emperor's backstory. I had read little blurbs on his character, and they said he was Chancellor of the Old Republic, or the senator in the Old Republic, and he turned it into the Empire under weird circumstances. So I didn't quite know he was a bad guy till I saw the film in its entirety. I didn't really understand how that worked totally.
Yeah, that's cool. So when you actually finally got to see the Emperor, right? Because you read it, like you said, you read a little bit about him, and then prior, before watching the films, like, is that what you expected to see? Was just some grungy?
He was a lot creepier than I expected. I thought, maybe he was just this old guy that is still around, from the Old Republic, and when I kind of realized he's this Dark Jedi, this Sith Lord, I was like, man, that's really creepy. I hadn't seen that coming. That was a surprise.
So out of the 3 films, which one would you say is your favorite one?
I go back and forth with my favorite. I think objectively the best one is A New Hope, just because it kicked everything off.
Yeah. I agree.
It's hard to beat that, because that's where all the original ideas came out of and stemmed from, and all these ships, the Jedi, lightsabers, the Death Star. I mean, it's hard to beat that. Yep. Some say like Return of the Jedi is more fun to watch because you see the most evolved version of the film, right? But it's really the Death Star all over again. There's a lot of repeat material with the lightsaber battles and that.
Yeah, Ewoks.
With Ewoks are great, but I think if I had to choose, it would be A New Hope.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think I think the movie's perfect. It gets it, like you said, it kicks everything off. You get to see all the characters, you meet them, Luke's story. It's a movie from start to finish, and it's just perfect. I love it. But I do enjoy Return of the Jedi. My favorite scene that comes to mind is Luke when he ignites, the green lightsaber. It's just, he's all in black. It's cool.
Oh yeah.
So what about from reading the material now and watching the films? Is there any characters that you thought you might have seen in these films that weren't in the books, or did you like some of the main characters? Like Luke, where you're.
Well, as far as characters that weren't in the books, I was surprised with some of them, like Nien Nunb in Return of the Jedi. Like, you don't really see a lot of him in the EU. He's mentioned here and there. But I remember reading the tales from Mos Eisley, the tales from Jabba's palace, the tales of the bounty hunters. I especially like that because you got backstory of these minor characters in the films, but they have their own story. You can see things from their point of view, and it just expanded the richness of the series overall. That everybody has a story, and that they're all interesting, right?
Oh yeah.
Even if a couple of them are silly, like the Jabba's palace, like chef story. I mean, they're designed to be humorous in a sense, but they're all interconnected, and they have this whole thing going on behind the scenes that you didn't really see in the film, right? Because you were following the main storyline. Right. But they have all these side stories, and that was fascinating for me. And that kind of ties into one of my other interests, is the Star Wars customizable card game from Decipher in 1995, because that card game gave every character a card. Every vehicle, every planet you see, they have a card in the game, and that game worked in conjunction with some of these tales from the bounty hunters, those types of stories, to like really expand the background of these characters. And the fact that you've got to play a card game with those characters and tell their own unique story, through the card game, similar to an RPG, was a lot of fun. That you got Boba Fett to battle alongside Darth Vader. Like, you don't really see that in the films too much. So you got to act it out yourself, and that was a lot of fun for me as a kid.
I was going to get into that because I know you're a fan of the old CCGs and such. I was always a Magic the Gathering player. I love that. I've been in and out of that a lot of times. But when did you get involved with that? Like, when?
So I'm trying to remember when I first got involved with it. I want to say we were on vacation somewhere. And they had a gift shop, just a standard gift shop, but they had Star Wars cards there. And I was a big sports card fan as a kid. I collected football cards, 1995, 1996, 1997. I traded with my friends. We busted open like entire booster boxes on our birthdays. I remember that. And we bought them because they were a couple dollars cheaper. I remember seeing the Star Wars cards there, but they were a couple of dollars more for whatever reason. I guess because they had a card game associated with it. And my money was always better spent on football, baseball, basketball, something like that. But I remember going on vacation. They had this gift shop, and they had cards, but they didn't have sports cards, so they had Star Wars cards. Naturally, that's what I picked up, right? And I think it was a pack of Reflections, if I remember right. And I got 2 Star Destroyers in the same pack. I got a Death Squadron Star Destroyer from Special Edition, and also the Vengeance Star Destroyer, which was part of Death Squadron. And that's very unusual to have 2 Star Destroyers in the same pack. They're really cool cards. They don't play too well competitively, but they were always fun to have in your deck because they're this big like behemoth that are very expensive but very hard to defeat as well. So
that's cool. Yeah, them games, I'm sure it was a blast. I kicked myself for not getting involved in that kind of stuff, but just Magic had my attention. So jumping back a little bit here. So you read some of the books, you watched the first 3 films, and then that's when you probably like dove right deep getting into the expanding universe and learning, and there's comics and the prequels will be coming out soon. So like, what was how did that whole event shake down for you?
Yeah, well, it was a lot of material. It seemed like at the time, even though looking back, there wasn't that many books, especially compared to now, and what really tied it all together for me was the essential guides, right? Specifically the essential guide to characters. The fact that they had like stills of photos from characters from the movies, from the comics, from the novels, and meshed all that together into one saga, one cohesive continuity. I was like, oh boy, man, I got to get into the comics next. And I kind of knew that from reading the Jedi Academy trilogy. They referenced a lot of like the Tales of the Jedi comics, and Exar Kun and Eula Quadroma and Empress Teta system and all that. And I remember on the other side of Barnes & Noble, you had the novels on one side, but then you had the graphic novels like to the back of you, and they were all mixed in. There weren't a lot of Star Wars graphic novels at that time. There was Dark Empire, Dark Empire 2, the Tales of the Jedi, and I got a bunch of the Tales of the Jedi comics, like the trade paperbacks, for either Christmas or my birthday one year. So I expanded my collection, and what I couldn't get from the store, because I had limited allowance money, I get from the library, right? So the library was a big draw for me because I could read the Star Wars encyclopedia they had there. They had a lot of the essential guides. They had just some other things that I couldn't necessarily find in stores. And they also had the audiobooks, which were a real treat because after I read the novels, you don't quite remember everything that you read. And although they were abridged, they were a good refresher for me, similar to how you'd watch the films over and over and over again. I'd listen to the audiobooks after I read the entire novel. And although it didn't have everything, it had, the more important plot points, right, here and there. And that was really fun to listen to because I think they did a great job, even though they were abridged. They had a lot of sound effects, and it was rare that you could find one. There was one library in my county that had all the audiovisual materials, and when you were able to find one at the library that wasn't checked out, it
was a bonus, a treat.
Yeah, that was a real rarity to find.
Do you enjoy audiobooks now? Do you still?
I have trouble paying attention.
Yeah.
It's sort of a catch-22. It's like you could listen to it in the background while you're at work or something, but then you miss certain things. Like you're not paying attention. You have to take a break. You have to take a call, and it's hard to keep your attention when you're doing things in the background. And when you just sit down and listen to it, it's kind of boring. I prefer to read a book if I were to have free time and say, okay, I'm going to listen to this audiobook.
Yeah.
I'd fall asleep on the couch, right? It wouldn't my attention. Like if you're going to listen to it, is at the gym, maybe during a walk or something like that. Maybe in the car, and then because it breaks it up in different sections, right? And it's hard to remember all that. It's hard to remember where you left off last trip, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So you were breaking up there a little
Break
bit,
up.
Scott. And yeah, I think you're coming back. Yeah, I have a hard time listening to audiobooks as well. I can't focus on it. But I will say I really do enjoy the Star Wars original radio dramas. Have you ever heard of them or listened to them? I'm sure you heard of them.
Yeah, I listened to the Dark Empire and then the Tales of the Jedi audio dramas. Those are the ones you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, they made the films actually where they had Mark Hamill.
They have some of the voice actors for them. Yeah, those are cool. I especially like the Dark Forces audio dramas. I think those are great.
Okay. I haven't checked them out. Yeah, you look like you're back now, smooth out here on my end.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
I have a hard time, like we were saying, I have a hard time focusing. If I could, I'd rather read the book. That's the way I prefer to do it now, and real quick, I just want to know, what do you enjoy, the trade paperback size, the regular soft cover, or like the hardback?
As far as books or the comics?
Yeah, no, for books. I just
so I prefer the hardcovers. Either the sci-fi book club versions. I think those are good enough to read, except they kind of fall apart because they're so old. So I end up reading the full size hardcovers if I can. So some don't have a hardcover version, so you're stuck reading the paperback. But if I had the choice, I'd choose hardcover.
Yeah, I like like you said, the book club edition there is a nice size. I really enjoy the trade paperback though, like the Essential Legends, the new collection.
Oh, really?
There. I like that size. It feels great.
How's the font on those? Because I haven't bought any of those yet.
No, it's good. Another friend of ours, a mutual person in the fandom here, Jeremy over at Super Chainsaw Productions, he pointed out that he likes them too, but the paper, he's like, it seems like the paper is kind of bad material. And I didn't really notice that at first, like it's thin. And now it's like, now that he said that, it's like, well, thanks for pointing that out to me now, because I didn't really catch that before. But otherwise, I think it's good. I think they're good.
I noticed in general, even in the mass market paperbacks, because I got a couple of my books signed from Kevin J. Anderson, because he has like his own online store, and he'll sign all his books. So I got a couple, like the Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina, Tales from Jabba's Palace signed.
That's cool.
And they have the Legends banner on it, and the glue is kind of sticking out, and it's not the best quality. I remember back in the day, the paperbacks were much better quality than they are today. But I was like, oh well, at least it's signed. At least I have a new version of this. So
yeah,
that's something.
Put it inside its own case, inside of a case, to make sure it doesn't hit the sun and the glue stays. Yeah, that's cool. Jumping back to the comics, I don't mean to trail off on us there. So there was a mixed match at the store. It was hard at Barnes and Noble. It's hard there wasn't many out there. Did you start with like Tales of the Jedi? Were them some of your first comics, or like what was your process there?
Yeah, Tales of the Jedi. I always, from the start, I read it from the graphic novel. So the collection standpoint, the individual comics by that point had already come out and were collected, and I didn't really have a dedicated comic store in my area that I knew of that my parents would take me to, because I was still super young at that point. But I do remember at certain Barnes and Nobles, at certain Walden Books in the mall, they had a newsstand with not only Star Wars comics, their individual issues, right? But they also had Star Wars magazines. And Star Wars Galaxy, the Topps magazine, that was also a great resource for me. I remember specifically issue 13, the issue about the Jedi. And I remember going to summer camp and bringing that with me. And I remember like I was climbing the trees in the park, and I had that magazine with me, and it had posters and all sorts of cool stuff that came along with it. But yeah, that was really cool. I didn't read too many of the individual comics, other than I think at the time Crimson Empire was coming out, and I was able to get some of the last few issues of Crimson Empire, like 5 and 6, I think.
Okay, interesting. So let's talk a little bit now about the prequels. We'll get that. We'll talk about the prequels.
Okay.
So you were did you go see all them in the theaters?
I saw the first two. So episode 1 would have came out when I was in 5th grade. So at that time they had like the Scholastic book series and all these tie-in materials to episode 1. So I was a big fan of all that. But after the film came out, it felt like, I don't know, it didn't quite match the quality of the classic trilogy. It wasn't quite what I expected. There were cool scenes. I love the pod racing. Don't get me wrong, Darth Maul, very cool character, but it wasn't quite up to par. Even for me as a little kid, I was like, something's not right here. And I could tell because there wasn't a lot of other things you could read at the time. They had the New Jedi Order coming out at that point, but everything else was pretty much tied into episode 1. They really wanted to promote that even after the film had aired in theaters, right?
Yeah.
So I remember reading a couple of the tie-in books, like Cloak of Deception, Darth Maul Shadow Hunter, those things. And I by the time, also Rogue Planet, I didn't really care for that novel because it had some problems for me because Tarkin has an interaction with Anakin at that point.
Yeah.
And it just seems off that they'd have that relationship so early.
Yeah.
It just struck me as like, man, that's not keeping in continuity. So that was kind of troubling. And by the time Approaching Storm came out, I had written off the prequel era entirely. I was like, man, I'm a post Return of the Jedi fan, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I like Rogue Planet. I like that book. I thought it was fun. It was a good read.
Okay.
There's some good moments there. I liked a lot of how like Qui-Gon was mentioned with Obi-Wan and how he was questioning things. I thought it was cool. But yeah, that little interaction was, So I did not know that you weren't the greatest fan of the prequels at the time back then. So do you still feel that same way now?
No. They grew on me, and specifically the book that made me appreciate it a lot more was Yoda Dark Rendezvous.
This one right here, sir.
That one right there. Good lead in there. But I remember reading the back of that in the bookstore and seeing how it featured Vijun, right, which was a planet from Dark Empire. It appeared here and there in some of the video games and in the Junior Jedi Knights. Anakin Solo goes there, but there wasn't a lot about that. But that always struck me as a cool planet. You had this whole like Edgar Allan Poe, like Fall of the House of Usher vibe to it. It had acid rain. It was the old castles, very old school. And I just that pulled me into the novel, and the novel only got better. I mean, it was featured Scout and Wee, and it had like sort of a Junior Jedi Knights vibe where they had a training competition in the Jedi
I really
Academy
that scene
on Coruscant.
Yeah.
That was really
well
cool.
written. Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
Oh yeah, and then it just got better with all the Dooku transactions with Yoda and their whole history, and it made Dooku an interesting character, which I thought Christopher Lee did a great job with him in episode 2, but really that was the only interesting aspect from episode 2 for me, like his encounter on Geonosis with Obi-Wan, and the fact that like,
yeah,
he knew something about the Sith that was going on, and maybe he was trying to stop it, even though he was portrayed as this bad guy. Like, you didn't really know what to think of him. It had a lot of conflicting things going on with Dooku, and that really shined through with Yoda Dark Rendezvous. So I was just enthralled by that novel, and from there I kind of went backwards in the timeline. Reading the Republic comic series, which I had picked up here and there. I remember Outlander was a specific series that I liked with A. Sherrod Het, but there was, Infinity's End and Darkness and these Quinlan Voss and Ayla Secura stories that didn't quite get my interest until the Republic series moved on to the Clone Wars, right? Where you had Quinlan Vos kind of go to the dark side and this kind of conflicting story with him. I mean, that really made me go back and read going forward again. Then I finally got up to like Jedi Trial with, Anakin's story being knighted and that. And I at that time, the micro series, the Clone Wars micro series had come out. So that all tied in together really well. That whole 2003 Clone Wars series, I think they did a great job just meshing everything together.
Yeah, I just recently watched the micro series for the first time. Like I didn't even know about it. So like the TCW Clone Wars is what I enjoy. I don't, maybe we could touch on that a little bit. I like that, but I just recently watched that. And I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was great.
I remember watching it as they came out on Cartoon Network. Every night I'd record it on VHS. I think that was one of the last things I recorded on VHS before DVDs took over.
Oh yeah.
But that was so frustrating because you only got like 5-10 minute little short clips, and if you wanted to see the whole series in their entirety, either you had to record it or you had to wait to the very end where they showed everything together. So they were real cool, but I was kind of frustrated with how short they were.
Yeah, I can only imagine that would have probably bothered me. Little 5-minute episodes. I mean, I know later on they came out with the collection where you can buy them on DVD. It's on Disney Plus now, and they put it as all one. It's like an hour long. So
okay,
it's pretty cool. Do you care? Did you enjoy the 2007-8 Clone Wars when that came out? I know we were talking about continuity, and I know a lot of people say there's some issues there, but
yeah, I was really confused when that came out. I had seen it in theaters. I think I was in college in 2008 when that came out, and I was definitely not the age group to watch it. I watched it with my little brother, who I guess arguably was within that age range, but it was not at all what I expected. So it revealed that Anakin has this apprentice, Ahsoka, and there was just all these problems with it. Like, Jabba has a son. Like, since when? I was like, where did they come up with these ideas? And there was just so much trouble because Asajj Ventress, they use these characters and these themes from the 2003 Clone Wars, and they used it in a way like, I think there's a scene in the feature film where Asajj says something to Obi-Wan that she says, "I missed you" or something. So is that an homage to the novels, like the Cestus Deception, the Republic comics? Like, we didn't know. There was a lot of weird things going on with there. I remember watching it in theaters and just thinking, like, when does this take place? And then when the individual TV episodes came out, I had even more questions. You had Yoda appear in the first episode, Ambush, right? And we were told in Yoda Dark Rendezvous that Yoda rarely leaves Coruscant, right? It's a big deal when Yoda leaves Coruscant, and yet he freely just goes off to this Todaria planet in the first TV episode. So I was like, there's something wrong here. And everybody was kind of up in arms in the forums, like asking questions like, how does this work? How does this work into the continuity? Does this override the previously existing material? And when the tie-in novels came out, like specifically the Wild Space Clone Wars novel, you have this 6-week gap. The narrator says there's 6 weeks between Anakin being knighted and the Battle of Geonosis, right? So I was like, how does that tie in? That just doesn't make sense. You have to squeeze in all those adventures that had come in such a tight space.
I'm currently reading that right now, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm reading through the timeline inside the book, so I'm just
okay. I won't spoil anything.
Okay.
It's so hard for me to spoil things because I read these so long ago. But I remember that being a pretty good book. Otherwise, it tells an important story about Bail Organa being a hero of the Clone Wars, which has been an established fact over the years, but we didn't really know how that occurred until that book.
Honestly, I was reading this. I break the other day at work, and I was like, I wanted to just keep reading. I couldn't put it down. Like what they do in here with Bail is phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
It made him so much mean more to, you know what I mean? Like it just, yeah, they did it. Karen Miller, it's the first book I ever read by her. I think she's really good. I just wanted to say that. But yeah, go on. Sorry.
Is it Karen Miller or Karen Travis? I thought Karen
Nope.
Travis.
Karen Miller.
Okay.
Karen Travis does the next one, I believe. No Prisoners. That's the
That's
next
right.
one in
That's
the order that. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot to touch on there because like to think of the continuity, like the people that grew up reading these books and following that story in the comics, like you said, there's just so much information there, and there's so many things that they touch on more, and other characters that you see snippets in the TV show compared to what you read about it, or it's wrong, like Asajj. It's just got to be mind blowing in a sense because like I didn't know, so I didn't read a lot of this material. But as I'm going through this journey, I'm starting to see things now that a lot of you guys have pointed out, or through the fandom, or you know what I'm saying? Not in a bad way, but just like, hey, this, like you said, is this override this now? It's
Yeah,
just,
it was definitely a situation where for the first time Lucasfilm had kind of taken both hands off the wheel and saying, do what you want with the TV show. And we kind of knew that was coming again with the Star Wars Underworld, which was discussed, but it was, I guess, was pushed back because Clone Wars was successful or something. I'm not real sure why the behind the scenes reason that got pushed back was, but yeah, man, it was a tough situation because we didn't really get an answer, and we were told just to wait out until the end of the show, and then they'll give us an explanation. The problem was with that, the show never seemed to end.
yeah,
It just went on and on and on. Like, we'd see another season, then Darth Maul returns. I'm like, oh man, this is just getting worse and worse. Like, when do we get an answer? Come on, guys.
yeah, it's nuts. But jumping back to Yoda Dark Rendezvous, because I believe that's your favorite novel, and it's fun. It was a great read. I enjoyed it. I can't wait to reread it because some of these I've read out of order, getting into this, but now I'm on the track, so I know it's coming up. What's your favorite part of the book? Like, what's the
I think just the final interaction between
Yoda?
or maybe the initial interaction between Yoda and Dooku
Yeah,
in that castle, and I guess there's a missile or something that
you got to
the
stop.
people have, that they got to stop, and it's just Yoda asks for a rose. You kind of think, oh, Dooku can turn Yoda to the dark side, and how would Yoda be if he turned to the dark side? Like, he would be unstoppably powerful. It's just one of those like fan theories. It's like, if you always wondered if Yoda turned to the dark side, what would happen? You kind of got a little look into that in that story, and I found it so fascinating. It added so much to Dooku's character, but also Yoda's character, and just man, it's hard to pick a favorite of that. There's just so many good aspects to the book. The book does have its continuity errors from here and there, but they try to integrate too much, I think, from some of the other video games and mobile games and Republic Comics, and they get some things mixed up as far as what comes before what. But the fact is they tried, right? It really expanded the richness of that series and just how things interact, and just made me want to go back and read everything that ties into this, right?
Yeah, that's how I feel, and
Yeah.
it's hard to do. And as you're a collector, which we'll get to, it makes it tough sometimes to try to get all the material to read it.
Yeah.
So you follow it. I know also that you mentioned that you are a big fan of the Bantam era, the 90s, the books. I want to mention to you as well that I think the covers on them are great. Like you said, Jedi Surge earlier. It just grabs your attention. I don't know. It's something about the way them books look.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite?
Well, I mean, Drew Struzan did a lot of those covers, and I think they just put a lot more effort into the covers during that time period, as opposed to later on in the 2000s, where they were kind of photoshopped and you had these weird effects going on. But they really wanted to do something special to kick off the expanded universe in its early years, and I think they did a tremendous job. Those covers are so memorable, and for me as a kid, I have nostalgic value from those stories. And when episode 1 came out, I didn't gravitate toward that as much. You didn't really have a lot of choices to read other than New Jedi Order at that time. I mean, we had little things that come out like Tatooine Ghost. You had some of the Del Rey novels that occurred post Return of the Jedi, but not too many. You had Survivor's Quest that came out. But the New Jedi Order, for me, I felt like the fans that are a little bit older than me appreciated that more. I was a little young to read that series when it was coming out.
Right.
I enjoyed it better the second time, but sometimes your first impressions stick, man. It's like Matt Wilkins always says, he remembers where he was when he first read these books, right? And
yeah,
a lot of times it's not the most exciting thing. You're waiting on somebody, or you're riding in a car and you're reading a book. But it's funny how these memories stick with you. You remember what happened during what you were doing when Kip Duran destroyed Karita in the Jedi Academy trilogy. I remember where I was. It's so vivid that those stick with you.
It's cool. It's cool that these books do that, because you feel these characters. You get into them. They're great books. They're phenomenal. They're most of them. Well, so far, everyone I've read is pretty darn good. And a lot of them I would reread. My favorite book is Maul Lockdown. I remember where I was when I seen it for the first time, and I've read it the most. And I don't know. It's just awesome. So,
yeah.
Do you have a favorite author from back that era?
I like a lot of them. Kevin J. Anderson, probably because he was most prominent. He actually, I think he did a great job integrating the comics and the novels into a cohesive continuity. There was a little bit of a butting of heads early on between Tom Veitch and Timothy Zahn, where they weren't quite in agreement where their novels should take place. But I think Kevin J. Anderson just picked up the ball and said everything counts. The comics, the novels, it's all one cohesive continuity. And then he went on to write things like the Essential Chronology. And I think he deserves a lot of credit just for his overall contributions to the story. I know, unfortunately, he stopped writing after about 2000, which is a shame, because I thought, because of the New Jedi Order, a lot of those Bantam characters reappeared. And I thought he would be a great candidate to write something during that time period.
Back in, yeah. I have not read that series. I've heard great things about the New Jedi Order, and I really enjoy the Jedi Academy series. I think Kevin J. Anderson did a phenomenal job, and I'm excited to read Darksaber. I've heard some good things about that novel as well.
Darksaber is a great one. I mean, that really led into almost it was one of the final Bantam novels where it felt like initially the Bantam novels were spread out and everybody had a specific era, a number of years after Return of the Jedi that they were going to write their story in. But Darksaber felt like it was a progression. It built upon the Zahn trilogy and the Kevin J. Anderson trilogy, and led into eventually Zahn's duology, which was like the finale of the Bantam era, right? So you got more of a direct timeline of how things developed, rather than everybody writing their own individual, self-contained story. I felt like Darksaber was the beginning of that.
Cool. That's cool. So when did you start? When have you? How do I say this? Do you own all of the expanded universe material? Do you have no?
No, there's some eras where I had a hard time reading. Old Republic. So I never really got into all the video games. I played a lot of them, but the Old Republic, specifically Revan. Now I tried to play Knights of the Old Republic many years after it had come out, and I just couldn't get into it, man. I had trouble, after I beat the first level, how do I exit that ship? I couldn't figure it out, man. I feel like such a boomer playing these games, man. It's
I feel you.
It's hard going back, and using those video game skills, but especially if you're not familiar with the game. But I tried to read the Revan novel, which I think was the first one chronologically that you should read of the Old Republic series. And I had a lot of problems with it. didn't like how there was a Sith Emperor, and they had an empire very similar to the Galactic Empire in the Rebellion era, with like ships similar to Star Destroyers, and you had kind of look-alike stormtroopers, and I don't know. It felt very unbelievable to me that you would have similar ships, similar technology in that era that it was
Back then,
supposedly taking
yeah.
place in. Yeah. So it never triggered my interest, and I didn't force myself to read that series. So I basically stopped halfway through that Revan novel, and I don't even own those books.
Okay.
But I recognize they're a part of the expanded universe, but I also recognize not everybody likes everything, and that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah, don't
Yes,
force
sir.
yourself to read something that you may not enjoy, that wouldn't lead to a good experience.
No, you're right, and I've had that experience a few times now, and because I love hearing everyone's thoughts and opinions on books, right? So I listen to some reviews and so on. Well, Red Harvest isn't a good novel, or Fatal Alliance isn't the best out of the, the Old Republic eras, and Rogue Planet even I've heard, and I read them, and it's like, man, I really enjoyed these. I thought they were pretty good. So yeah, don't it's fun to hear other people's thoughts and ideas behind things, but give it a shot. You never know, and some things just ain't for someone, and that's cool. There's enough of it, right? There's so much material out there.
Yeah.
So what about now 2014 comes, right? Disney buys it. I know it's affected a lot of people, and I can understand why now. So what was that experience like for you?
Well, it was a hard time to be a Star Wars fan, specifically an expanded universe fan, right? I guess it was okay to be a Star Wars fan if you were willing to like take a fresh start, look at things. But
yeah.
I mean, for me, who had always been a fan primarily of the expanded universe, the fact that it was ending, and Lucasfilm came out with this very patronizing video about just general facts of what the expanded universe was, and the fact that they were going to use ideas from it in the new canon. They just mentioned a few novels like Dark Empire, the Brian Daley novels, and the Zahn trilogy, right? And Dave Filoni was on it. You had a couple Lucasfilm, members. Just I thought it was very disrespectful overall, and I think they would have been better just not to do it at all. quite frankly, because I think it just made people upset. It just stirred the flames a little bit in a lot of regard. But when I first heard the announcement, I was in grad school in college. I had a basically a full-time job at the same time, and I was just busy with other things in life. I didn't have the proper time to like sit down and just go through this. The realization.
Yeah.
It was one thing that I just read during lunch. I was like, oh, the expanded universe is gone. We kind of knew that already, right? With the buyout and the fact that, Dark Horse was like losing the license, and you could kind of see the writing on the wall that good things weren't about to come. But the fact that they were ending it entirely was a big blow. And, some people took it and said, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to follow it. But for me, I felt like there was a lot of unknowns because some people took the approach that said, okay, well, if we're not going to get new expanded universe materials, I'm going to still buy the new stuff and try to integrate it into the old stuff. A lot of people took that approach. That didn't turn out to work very well, but it did work for certain things because I read a handful of the first few novels, like A New Dawn. Kind of felt like an expanded universe novel, right? It definitely tied it into the Rebels TV show, but if you squint, you could say, that kind of fits. Same thing with Tarkin, right? It was always written to be an expanded universe novel, and it even tied into like the Dark Lord, some of James Luceno's other works, like the Battle of Mercana is mentioned. Some of the Jedi are mentioned, like from that battle. So you can kind of see that there isn't a clean cut between the expanded universe and canon, and especially with things like the Fantasy Flight RPGs, it's the same deal. They used a lot of the old lore kind of mixed in with what they thought was going to be for the new canon, and a lot of people are confused by all that. It didn't also help because Wikipedia, in their stance and try to integrate the new canon, they had two different tabs. They had one expanded universe and one canon, right? One legends and one canon. And I thought that muddied the waters, that made people confused in a lot of regards, because they thought, oh, that's the same character, but it's not meant to be the same character. It's not even the same continuity, right? It really shouldn't have been on the same wiki at all. The expanded universe as it existed is an entirely separate timeline. The new canon, it's separate deal. And a lot of people in 2014, they said, we don't like the 2014. We think it should end and just make expanded universe. I wasn't anyone saying that at all. Like, I was saying, just continue the expanded universe. We recognize that they're going to promote this new canon with the films, the TV, that they might have their own books, but just give us little snippets, just give us a short story here and there, a novel here and there. We don't need the whole, 4 novels a year type of deal, but just give us something, because we followed it for so many years. I felt it was disrespectful to end it. But I mean, we could go into, the politics of it, with the influencers at the time. I mean, there was a lot of podcasts that I listened to, a lot of websites, the force.net, how they've were initially very supportive of the expanded universe in its early years, but kind of did a 180-degree turn against it in 2014. A lot of these other websites, Club Jade, they really kind of turned their back on the expanded universe, and it was sad to see. But we don't have to get all into all that, or we could if you want to. But
that's right. I just wanted to know your experience and how you felt, and I know you, like you said, you've been a fan since the beginning. You started with the novels and these characters and these situations and these events. I mean, I know sometimes memory gets us and we forget certain names and such, but it meant something to you because you had a passion for it, right? And it's been a part of your whole life, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. Since I started reading, I mean, I was always a fan, and back when I was in school, it's kind of weird to think now that Star Wars wasn't cool because it's now mainstream and everybody knows about it. But back in the day, if you read Star Wars in high school, like, nobody would talk to you. Like, you had to keep that on the down low. Yeah, I was more of a closeted, expanded universe fan. I had all the novels, but I didn't really talk about it with my friends. That was.
Yeah, it's a shame that I had another gentleman on that had kind of a similar issue where he was just made fun of for instead it's like it's so huge, it's just people can't really fathom how big this fandom is, whether it's just the expanded universe or the newer Disney stuff canon, but as a whole, it's huge.
Yeah, it's huge, and everybody has their own unique experience based on what year they were born. Shortly for me, after Episode 1, Star Wars wasn't cool anymore. At least for my peers, people my age range. Other people might have different experience. Obviously, if you were a kid when the sequels came out and you have Star Wars on these streaming services, it's a completely different animal now. But I always followed it. To the very end, to Fate of the Jedi, to Crucible, and to see that go away, and really it went out with a flutter, not with a bang, right? I felt like Dark Horse specifically in their handling of some of the titles that they chose to write about at the very end with this Brian Wood series were kind of head scratchers, man. I was like, I'd prefer Crimson Empire 4 or something, along different lines. I felt like, the Dark Times comic run went way too long and didn't really lead anywhere. I guess they were going to tie into a TV show where George Lucas wanted Quinlan Voss to survive and have that jump off from that comic series, but that never really came to be. So, I mean, there was a lot of missed opportunities, and I don't mean to sound bitter about it, but it was a rough time to be a Star Wars fan, and that needs to be recognized because.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's, and it's true. And I'm a fan of both. I'm enjoying the expanded universe. I'm learning about it. It feels like Star Wars to me, but I'm a fan of the new stuff as well, but like it boggles my mind because you get attached to these, like I was saying a little bit ago. Like some of these books, I'm not gonna lie, I was emotional. So
Mm.
like to just have that ripped from you guys and saying, well, we're just not going to deal with that anymore. That's just, it's a terrible thing. I mean, they could have continued, like you said, give you little short stories or continued on with a comic run or something, you know?
Yeah, there was just a whole power play, a whole dynamic. New canon fans versus the old expanded universe fans, and we had these labels put on us that we somehow hated the new canon. That wasn't true at all. It's like, yeah, we'd crack a joke at, some of the
Yeah.
funnier aspects about some of the films here and there, but I don't really have an opinion on the new stuff. And I think that the ramifications of that continue on to this day, where some people compare the new stuff to the old stuff. Listen, guys, it's not comparable. It's not the same thing. The
Right.
expanded universe was an entirely different timeline. It has its own storyline. Don't try to compare it to something that
Right.
it isn't comparable.
Yep. Just keep them separate, enjoy what you want and go from there, you know?
Yeah. And some people like both. I mean,
Yeah.
that's great. I happen to not care about it. I mean, I read a handful of the first few novels, mostly because you had this whole weird aspect where Timothy Zahn and James Luceno were trying to bridge the gap between the two continuities. I mean, you kind of had a weird scenario where they were trying to use both. And we didn't know, what the future held at that point, right? Was there some, did we hold out hope that maybe James Luceno would continue to write books as if they were expanded universe? Yes, I hoped for that, but that wasn't the case. So I felt like we didn't have the full story of information laid out in front of us. So, it was a difficult time for sure for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you watched the sequel trilogy at all?
Yes, I did watch it just because I felt like I needed
You
to
had
be
it too.
informed about it, right? I thought the first one, the music, if there's one positive aspect I could say about the sequels, it's the music of the first film was very good. John Williams did a great job.
Yeah.
I can't say more positive things about any of the films other than that. But I won't. At the same time, I won't dunk on them. I recognize people like them, and they have a right to like them. There could be a variety of reasons why they do like them. They were exposed to them as a kid, so
right.
We shouldn't we shouldn't poo-poo that at any regard, because people like what they like, man. It's
cut and dry.
Yeah.
And I respect that, and I appreciate everyone's thoughts and on the matter. And yeah, some people don't like it, some people like it. I could say I've only watched them probably 3 times each. I compared, like, it's never a go-to for me. Let's just put it that way. So we'll jump back a little bit to collecting, because I know you've been showing some pretty cool rare gems and such, book toppers from the old Bantam era. You had a nice video about that, showing them off, that they're really great shape. That's cool. So when did you want to start collecting all this older, or trying to find these, from the expanded universe from back then?
Well, I guess I was really just surprised in general that a lot of this stuff was still available. I mean, I remember seeing some of those book displays from way back when, and I just had no idea anybody would care to keep those, right? That those would still be around in somebody's attic, in somebody's basement. So when I found that those are still available and I had some money to actually buy those, I was like, yeah, 100%. I'd love to have some of those things. And I felt like, just in general, during the last few years of the expanded universe, you had so many like mainstream action figures. You had these comic packs that were in stores, Target, Walmart. You had Lego sets that were that featured the Force Unleashed, right? A lot of these prominent expanded universe stories, and I always had the sense that stuff would be around forever, right? Like, there was no rush to buy every little thing. Like the Force Unleashed had these super deluxe releases of the video game that include a poster and, this rare artifact from the game or whatever. I felt like I didn't need to buy that because those would always be around, right?
Yeah.
But when the expanded universe ended, I really had to look back and said, I should probably start collecting some of these, because they turned out to be in demand, especially when the new canon didn't really hit home with a lot of people and they started looking for alternatives. With this influx of new expanded universe fans, they started collecting those. So we had to compete against them. So there was a whole weird dynamic with collecting through the years where people were dumping their collections, right, when they announced the expanded universe was gone, but then it immediately picked back up a couple years later. And some of the rarer, like promo items, the posters, the price point on those work the same way, right? There's an interest in that stuff now. It's very hard to get things like the imprint, the Fate of the Jedi short story tie-in that was from the expanded universe, like the Hyperspace Fan Club, right? So they sent those out. I forget, maybe it was 2012, 2013. But finding those now, man, they go for over $100 for just this little short story.
That's crazy.
And whenever they appear, I mean, there's a mad rush. There's a real demand for these. So I think the price point's only going to go higher in the future as we have new fans latch on to the expanded universe, and they want to be, number one as far as collecting. All these newcomers are anxious to spend their money on this stuff, and rightfully so. I mean, they have just as much right to do that as we do. But now there's competition, whereas before I felt like there wasn't, and they'd be around forever.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, you're right. A lot of the stuff is it's expensive. It's even the books. Like I was trying to get like the Young Jedi Knights, trying to start to collect them, and it's like, between eBay and Mercari, and you're looking at Amazon. Sometimes it's like the price of books, even like Heart of the Jedi. That was at one time people were selling that for $300.
Yeah. I find that incredibly fascinating. And Dylan on the expandeduniverse.com did a great job of tracking the price point on those, which I know, props to him, because I couldn't pay attention to all those numbers. But
the number guy.
Yeah, definitely. So it's kind of fun to track that and discuss it. Even though I was able to get a couple of copies right when it was released on Amazon, but I just know people who would be interested in the 2015, the 2016 version that came out through Lulu, and that whole hardcover version. Now there's a million different fan printings now with the advent of Lulu, and the fact that there's all these files going around of different fan versions, bootleg copies of these books, and you can make your own super deluxe, hardcover X-Wing series with the artwork on the spine and all that. It's crazy now. I don't know what to think of all that. Like, I haven't really pulled the trigger on the Lulu stuff. I mean, there's certain things I feel like I should get, like the Han Solo Adventures in Hyperspace Book 3, and then they have a hardcover version of the Lando Calrissian Adventures, the third book in hardcover that never appeared from the Sci-Fi Book Club. So they have fan versions of those. So I think there's a couple ones that you should definitely pick up as a fan, in case Lulu puts the lid on this. Because if people keep showing these off, like, I don't know how long they're going to be allowed.
Yeah, I know. And, Scott, real quick, I want to say, I appreciate how knowledgeable you are. You're very quick, and like through our whole conversation so far, you just remember dates and specific events, and like you're a true collector when it comes to this, man. Like it's crazy to me, even some of the younger folks that we were talking earlier, just the knowledge, like it's impressive to me.
I was amazed talking with Brandon how much he learned, he picked up in just a short amount of time. And I feel like I have all these things going on in my head, and it's hard to put them into words sometimes, because I have dates and just threads that discussion threads that have been going on for years and years, and I remember them, but it's hard to put it in a narrative that a new fan would be able to appreciate and understand sometimes.
You do a good job, my friend. And I want to say the bookshelf behind you looks really cool. Is that Is that where you keep all your Star? Yeah, look at that.
They don't all fit in one spot. So I have them dispersed throughout my house. I have some on the other side. I have some in another room. I have like RPGs and these big encyclopedias and essential guides that are weird shapes. Some of the artwork books are kind of too big to put on a shelf. The cross section books. So I have them interspersed through a lot of different places. Some people just have their shelf and it's all paperbacks or all hardcovers. I have a whole bunch of stuff. Comics, children's books. I have audio dramas. I have soundtracks. I have card games. I have a lot of things interspersed.
That's really good. Is there any other fandoms that you're into? I know you mentioned RPGs and stuff. Or is there?
No, I'm kind of weird. I'm not interested in superhero movies of any regard. Star Wars has been my only like nerd fandom, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I got into like right after the expanded universe ended. I felt like I had to pick up some comics because I was picking up the Legacy 2 comics. I was picking up the Brian Wood series and series like Rebel Heist and that. So I felt like I had to continue because I knew some of these guys at the comic book stores. Like I felt like I needed to keep continuing. So I picked up the Power Rangers, the Boom comic series after that. I'm of a unique age where Power Rangers, the original series, was something I watched as a kid. So it was cool to see. Yeah, to see that was continuing in comic book form. So I followed some of those storylines. They were okay, not to the extent of Star Wars at all.
Yeah, but, that's the number, that numero uno there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a friend, Brock. He's a big Power Rangers fanatic, loves Power Rangers, and I grew up with the original ones too. But yeah, Star Wars is kind of I've been in and out of the fandom through the years, but like just so much nostalgia. Like we were talking about certain time, the certain age. You were born in between the original trilogy and the prequels. So you got. So yeah. Anyway, I don't mean to ramble on there, but so collecting, you got the bookstore toppers. Is there any like rare, really things that you're proud of?
I mean, it's hard to say. It's like, pick something out of your collection that's your favorite. Well, for me, it's probably the Essential Atlas or probably, the Essential Guide to Warfare. Stuff that isn't really rare. I collect a lot of the cards. I'll just show these off real quick. A lot of people don't know Shadows of the Empire. They had soundtracks, but they also had trading cards, right? I don't know how well this will show off on webcam, but they have the artwork of the Hildebrandt brothers, who did
Greg
was commissioned for a lot of the scenes in Shadows of the Empire. So there's a whole card set of those series. For Shizor there breaking somebody's neck.
Yeah,
pretty cool. And you got Lando playing Sabacc there. Some speeder bikes, just some real great artwork.
Yeah, that looked really good.
So I collect a little bit of everything. Anything that has just a tint of expanded universe, like these card sleeves, Shadows of Mindor there. There's also some from the X-Wing series. Now, these are from Fantasy Flight. I think they were supposed to be used with the Star Wars LCG card game, but people use these for a variety of games. They fit the Decipher Star Wars CCG. They fit the Wizards of the Coast Star Wars TCG. So just anything expanded universe related, I tend to pick up, especially if it deals with artwork. These are cool. This is the art of the Star Wars comics. So these are like a series of postcards, but they have tons and tons of just like cover art from comics over the years. Let me see if I can get them out here. Show them off. Here's Republic.
Oh, wow.
I think I put them in order, so all these will be Republic. But yeah, these are just postcards. And
that's really
I think
cool.
These came around 2010, 2011, somewhere around there. But great way to get the artwork in a different form, So anything like that. I mean, I collect the RPGs, Kraken's Threat Dossier there. Some of these adventure journals. Like I'll just show this off real quick. I was talking to you about Nathan P. Butler, longtime Star Wars podcaster. He actually signed this from his personal collection that he used this for the Star Wars Timeline Gold. So I got
Really?
a token piece of his collection when he sold it off.
That's cool.
And then I got Dark Strider campaign with all the supplements here. I'll just open it up. We got Endgame, Cathal Rift, Cathal Outback. I just put them all into this this box here, even though all the supplements are sold separately. Normally, if you get this box, you just get the base campaign set.
Do you play any of them still? Like, do you have a group or any?
I wish we could play it. I mean, we talked about it on some of the Discord with Lance and Marcel about trying to play Dark Strider. I think that would be really fun. I've never really had, other Star Wars fans to play against, but now, since we have this whole little motley crew community, maybe that's in the works sometime. Here's another one, Lords of the Expanse. This is cool because it has all these different supplements. Like, you get posters on this. This is the poster of the Tapani sector, double-sided.
So that looked all that stuff that looks pretty in really good shape too, like in good condition.
Yeah, I mean it's got its nicks and here and there, but this is really cool because you have these elite Imperial houses of the Tapani sector, and they all have their emblems here on the back. This is the player's guide to Tapani, and it's just crazy how they created this whole little world within West End Games. Aside from the movies, like none of these ideas are touched on in the films. These are all unique aspects to the expanded universe. So a lot of real cool lore that, I try to collect all that. And, so mainly artwork, things like this Star Wars journal here. There's been a couple of these from the Bantam era.
Oh, look at that.
This is just a notebook, a blank, notebook journal.
The bookmarker.
But it has a bookmark there from Truce at Bakura and the actual cover art from Truce at Bakura, and it wraps all the way around. There's a couple of these. There's one from the Courtship of Princess Leia, and there's one from the Crystal Star as well. Slightly different colors, but all that stuff. I mean, you can still find it on eBay. So if you're a fan of that material, go for it. I say,
Yeah, well, it's what you want people to go for it, but also you want to get it, because I'm sure a lot of us can contend to the fun eBay battles and the bidding wars of certain material pieces. That's always fun.
Yeah, I mean, some stuff is more prominent, but some stuff also flies under the radar a little bit. I won't mention the stuff that I'm still after, but
no, right.
I mean, if you know what to look for, I mean, there's some deals to be had. So some of this stuff, a lot of this stuff really isn't that hard to find. Cool. So you'd be surprised.
Yeah, that's when it comes to collecting, there's just so much and so many options. I don't know if you collect Legos or not, but I kind of started going down that path a little bit, because really it's crazy what Legos go for, especially ones that they don't make after a while.
Yeah. I remember when Lego first started releasing their Star Wars sets. I was a little old for it. I guess Lego has older fans now, but at the time I felt like I was too old for Legos. But my younger brother was really into the Star Wars sets for Lego. Like, he had the Imperial Shuttle, he had Boba Fett when it came out, like a lot of those original sets that go for a lot of money now if you still have them in good condition in the box. We put them all in this big like Lego tub, so it all got interspersed over the years. And I think it's still in my parents' closet. I'll have to check, but there's probably some good stuff in there. As far as like, did I collect like Star Wars Legos? Not really, but I wish I would have picked up like those expanded universe sets from the Force Unleashed, right? Because I thought those would be around forever. Like, I didn't notice anything unusual about that, but it's really unique how Lego has its own expanded universe sets. I mean, you just don't have that opportunity to buy that anymore.
No, you don't. And like you said, if you do see them, they're crazy expensive. Even just the figures alone, the characters sometimes are like, I've seen them go for $100, and it's like, wow, like the Qui-Gon, the Duel of the Fates. There was one with Darth Maul, and that's crazy expensive. But So no, the only thing you really collect then is like books and then the rare gems, and like you're a big fan of the artwork.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the artwork. I mean, I collect the trading cards. Um, there's some games like the Star Wars Pocket Model game where the the company like WizKids they created other games. So like Pirates of the Frozen North, they had Pirates of the Caribbean. They had a set that tied into like the Disney movie Pirates of the Caribbean. So I collect some of their other games, and there's a whole community behind that. I collect some of the other trading card games here and there. I'm not a Magic player or Yu-Gi-Oh player or anything like that, but I'm a casual player of Pokemon because it's a cheap game to pick up, and I have a couple friends that play. Although I haven't been showing up to league night in a long time, so I'm interested in a lot of like casual Star Wars CCG or miniature games like that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I used to play Pokemon as well. It was for I have two friends actually. They own a game store here. They do a lot of board games. Very cool. A lot of Magic things, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, the whole deal. So it's interesting, how fun that can be too, all on its own, and it's not that expensive. I mean, it can be. I mean, a lot of these card games could go for, like you said, some of them packs. I'm sure probably weren't that cheap that you had purchased there. Like Shadows of the Empire and.
I mean, Shadows of the Empire. That's one of the sets that like flies under the radar a little bit. So you can actually find that really cheap, and like the Star Wars Galaxy trading card sets, those feature a lot of the Bantha Mirror artwork from series 1, 2, and 3. Some of them are kind of cartoony. They're sort of based on the comics. They're a different style than cards of modern times are, but you can find that stuff. I mean, they were printed so much. Just you talk sports cards in the 1990s, they were just printed to high heaven.
Oh yeah.
And I have great collections that are near and dear to me, but as far as like monetary value, they're basically worthless,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny how those things turn out. But you talk about like the Star Wars CCG, for example. I mean, there's grading communities on YouTube where people talk about the state of the market. And what's interesting is the most expensive sets are the sets that were least popular at the time of release, like the Episode 1 sets, because nobody bought them.
Yeah.
They printed very, very few, and now the price like skyrockets for an alternate art Queen Amidala or whatever, Queen the handmaidens and all that. I mean, all those are like super expensive, right?
Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts how and in a sense we kind of drive the market up for it, I would say.
Yeah, I mean it ebbs and flows a little bit. The more people you kind of pull in, the problem with it is the people that are interested are like high income earners, right? Because they were the nerdy kids that played the Star Wars CCG. Now they're like doctors, lawyers, like computer engineers, and they make a lot of money and they spend a lot of money as well.
Scientific biologists or something crazy, that we've never heard of. Well, right. you were talking before we got started. You mentioned you were almost an astronaut. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't say that at all.
That was somebody else. That might have been one of your previous guests.
Yeah. So, do you have any like pieces of art that like a bigger, collection that you have framed, or have you met any of the artists, or
No, I haven't really met anybody. I mean, I collect a lot of the posters. Here's one from the Clone Wars, probably too big to show on camera, but
oh wow,
yeah, I haven't really framed any of these, but some of these are just so iconic. Look at the color on that for Star Wars the Micro Series. There's a lot of promo posters, a lot of ways you can get the artwork in really big sizes. I mean, this is a huge poster.
Yeah.
So I have some of those, one for Death Troopers here.
Oh my goodness sakes.
This is double-sided, has Fate of the Jedi on the other side, but
nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big size. And there's other little promos, like I have one for cool. Kenobi and Maul Lockdown. This stuff isn't hard to find. They were printed to put in front of like game stores and bookstores, and they're still around in pretty good quantities. So if you like that kind of stuff, you can find it.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about them too. Kenobi and Lockdown after the show here.
Oh yeah, I could show that too. I actually have several of those. That's a smaller size here.
So while you're digging that out, what's your thoughts on like them reprinting? Like I know you said you didn't buy any of the Essential Legends, but like, what about like the Epic collections? Oh my goodness sakes!
Yeah, and I have several copies of these.
Oh my goodness! Ah, dude, I like that.
Yeah,
friend.
I mean
That
this is
is
smaller,
nice.
but I have several of these. Like, just multiple copies. Like I said, these were printed in pretty good quantities. So.
Wow, that very nice. So yeah, what's your thoughts behind them like reprinting? I know a lot of these expanded, like the Heir to the Empire trilogy has been reprinted several times already, but now they're coming out with like the Epic collections and
So let me grab one of these. Like these Epic collections, I think are pretty good. The page quality on these are a little on the thin side. I mean, they printed these, pretty much not giving a lot of thought to how well they might hold up in in future years. But these are a great way to collect the comics, because some of these, like Tales of the Jedi, that hasn't been printed since 2007. I think the omnibus for Dark Horse came out. So the fact that they're doing these Epic collections, that they're doing the hardcover omnibus, I mean, that's just a great way. If you instead of finding individual comics or the old trade paperbacks, I think it's a great way to go. It's pretty cheap, and if you buy these Epic collections within a reasonable amount of time from release, you can get them for decent prices. If you wait, sometimes they go up depending upon how popular the series is.
I know it's crazy, and I'm starting to get them too. And you're right, they're way cheaper when upon release, and then later on, it's like, holy man, like I want the Old Republic Volume 1, and it's like $100 for that Epic collection, if not more.
Yeah, I'm so confused why they don't realize that and just print more of those. I think they have from like Epic collections that came out in maybe 2015 or so, but it takes a number of years for them to realize that and get a second print run going.
I think like we were talking earlier about them continuing the expanded universe. There's money to be had there. There's gold there, because there is so many fans that want more of it, and people are buying it. Like, and they should just print it. I see. I'm torn, because as a collector and someone who wants something to be worth something one day, yeah, don't overprint it. But now it's like you want to get more fans drawn in. You don't want them turning away because I can't afford $100.
I'm always in favor of accessibility. So
yeah,
I've never considered my Star Wars collection to be an investment that I get a return on. Although I've sold some things, I've always tended to buy them back, just because it's hard to move all the stuff when you get a huge collection. But yeah, man, I think they should print more. I know some people from some of the licensing companies have watched our stuff, and I almost feel like they've responded to us when we say certain phrases like they're leaving money on the table, right? Or when they have Escape from Dagu, why not just print it, right?
Yeah,
because they kind of listen to what they say, and they'll repeat certain phrases they hear. That's why I kind of think sometimes they'll listen to like Matt Wilkins streams and other streams like this where we're talking about printing some of that stuff. I think there's more behind the scenes as far as like contractual agreements.
Yeah.
I know from Escape from Dagu, Bill Dietz has supposedly been paid for the work, but we don't know what the reoccurring payments would be for a royalty agreement. So stuff like that is kind of hard to deduce from us just being fans. We're just speculating at this point. So I think we have to be careful in some sense to not assume certain things, although yes, I mean, they have material that they can print. We would urge them to do so in any way they can. it's not always that simple.
No, yeah, and I thought of that too. Like you were saying, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that we don't know, and agreements. And there was, I mean, let's face it, Star Wars material has switched hands. We got Dark Horse, and we're over at Marvel. Now we're at Del Rey. Now we're at Band. You know what I mean? There's a lot, it, like a lot of hands in the pot.
Yeah, and I know, like, maybe some of your viewers would be aware that Praying for Time, the Andy Magel short story, was released on YouTube a couple days ago, maybe a week at this point. And there's stories that may be out there that may not be fully dispersed amongst the viewing population.
Yeah.
But there's still hope that some of that stuff can be published as far as a new comic, right? We got Marvel 108 a couple years back, and there's no reason why some of this stuff can't be released in the future for monetary value. I think back to the Heart of the Jedi, right? That Kenneth Flint kind of did this media tour a little while ago when that when that book was re-released through Amazon, and it absolutely blew up. It sold wildly beyond anyone's expectations, right? And I felt like he was kind of disappointed that he didn't get any monetary value. I mean, he was happy to
get his name out there
and know that people were reading his book for the first time, which was amazing that this was discovered. But it was almost like, oh, he didn't get paid for this. And if you know the story behind the scenes of how he was kind of screwed over in his writing career for that, it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
A little bit if you know all the details behind that. So yes, it's a good thing people are getting to see this, but I want people to be compensated from their work, and I want it released in a way, in the right way, to respect the original author in that.
100%. I agree 100% with that. And it's true. They should, because it's work in the made. And yeah, he was kind of shafted. We don't need to get into the whole story, but yeah, that's kind of a tough deal. But I'm glad he got his name out there. Ben from Star Wars Timeline had him on his channel. They had an interview. He got the interview. He talked with them. So that was cool here, so I was appreciative of that. You know what I mean? It's good.
Sure.
And there is, like you said, there's a lot of short stories out there that we're not aware of, and they're starting to surface. And the Lightsider thing is coming about, and that's good. And I hope they keep coming out with more, because it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I had read Lightsider. I had it for a few years. I can't disclose where I received it from. But I was of the opinion that as long as somebody owns it, as long as it's kept intact somewhere, as long as it's released sometime, I don't really care when I finally get to read it, right? As long as it's preserved for future generations or future viewing, I just like to know that it's somewhere safe, even though I haven't read it yet. The fact that it's out there and it's being preserved, that's the important point for me. Because a lot of this stuff, I've reached out to some of the RPG writers like Eric Troutman about the canceled X-Wing source book from West End Games, right? And there was supposed to be a short story from Michael Stackpole. I asked, like, did he ever write pen to paper on that? How far did he get on that project? And they created certain stats in that, and he was very forthcoming about the information. He didn't get paid for any of that, man. So it's kind of a sore subject to bring up when you're digging for, unreleased or canceled material like that. But not a lot was preserved. I mean, he had notes around his house, but Michael Stackpole never really wrote the short story, which that would have been the big portion of that, right? That would have been what people are interested in. But I'm interested in just any little detail that can come out, even if it's just a little character description about, someone in Rogue Squadron. So, I mean, everybody has their preference on little things like that. I'm more of a fan of just the very minute details.
I was going to say, you're a fine detail kind of guy over here. Yeah, but that's okay. That's good. I mean, I was going to ask you, like, you would, it seems to me like you enjoy kind of searching and getting information on, sides of things that weren't released, or how far did he get, you know what I mean? That's a good, you should document to present, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big portion of what I discuss with other fans on platforms like this. But I just feel like with Michael Reeves recently passing, and some of these authors that we're losing, unfortunately now nobody can ask him about his experience, right? We all only have the interviews that he did over the years, going back, or what we can find on the internet. So as long as we have these links to the past still around, and they're willing to answer our questions, I feel like, respectfully, there's no harm in asking those questions, right?
No.
If they're willing to give you an answer. But you have to be very, very careful on approaching that subject, because a lot of these projects were canceled under very difficult circumstances, where the authors ended up not getting paid, and
Yeah,
they were worried about making rent. It's a very sore subject in a lot of
yeah,
cases. So
yeah, different than what it is now, you know. And it's a shame too, like the 2014 will say, when, you know, they cut everything off, you know, a lot of these authors didn't get a chance to continue on writing, you know. I mean, because most of them, they just love to write. It's their passion, right? They enjoy
mhm.
writing stories. So a lot of them we didn't get to see right in the newer side of canon.
Yeah, and I was surprised talking with I talked with Keith Capel on from Fantasy Flight on his experience. He wrote some of the core rule books for like Force and Destiny, and certain things like that. And I think he wrote for Wizards of the Coast, if I'm not mistaken. But he does some Q&As here and there. I think this was a Discord platform, and I asked him about the little blurb in Force and Destiny, about the Clone Wars, right? Is it a retcon? Is it Comp Nor propaganda? And he's like, well, you can read that if you want to, but that wasn't a concerted effort on his part to write that. And he thinks he read that part. Matt Wilkins has a different story from I think a convention that he asked a similar question, but you'll find like these writers are very knowledgeable about the old expanded universe. They read the West End games. They're a fan just like we are, and they have other jobs too, which are quite interesting. I think he has a military background of like merchant marines, or something like that, where he has work outside of what he does for RPG writing. So
Yeah,
it's funny how these careers kind of shape up, that they can do this on the side of something else.
yeah. Mr. Mike Beadler, he worked with Tom Veach. He's done some. I don't know if you're familiar with the name, but he's done a lot of contributions and continuity and such with Star Wars from back in that time era. And you know, he was in the service, and you know, flies and stuff, and it's pretty interesting to find out, like, a lot, you know, some how their backstories are, and where they can get some of their experiences from, you know.
Yeah, and it helps a lot of times in their writing. Like they know the layout of a Star Destroyer, like all the internal compartments, and how the deck would be assembled, and where the crew quarters are. And you can get a lot of like ideas from their real life experiences
Right.
in those cases. So
Yeah, and it's cool to add it into the galaxy far, far away that we love so much, right?
yeah,
So how much has Star Wars impacted your life?
I don't know. It's been a time sink and a money sink at certain times. Um, it's always been something I've been interested in. I feel lately, uh, like I haven't felt the urge to read as much expanded universe, like revisit these old stories as much. Mostly because now there's a community on YouTube you can talk to
Yeah,
about these, and it's like,
yeah,
how much of this time do we just spend talking about the expanded universe, which is an important thing, don't get me wrong, but does that lead to a reduction in the amount of time that you would normally read this material? So I kind of feel like that sometimes. Like how has it impacted me overall? I mean, it's always been a big part of my reading experience. I don't really read much outside of Star Wars. I mean, that's usually my go-to if I have some free time. I'm picking up a Star Wars book, a comic. If I'm traveling somewhere, I'll throw something in my bag. It's always been a nice, relaxing escape for me. And
Yeah.
I wish I had more time to actually go through in chronological order, in release order, and do these massive reviews that people like Matt Wilkins have done. And I just think that's tremendous how they have the free time to be able to do that and make reviews on
Yeah.
YouTube. It's
Oh yeah.
amazing, because I wouldn't have the time to do that. No way.
No, yeah, he's great. I mean, he's been a big positive influence in the expanding universe, Mr. Wilkins. His reviews are good. Meg reviews, she's phenomenal when it comes to, and I kind of started not really doing reviews, but just a blog, because it'll be a good I just want to have a memory too and something to look back on. And, when we were talking about investments, not looking at Star Wars as an investment. In a sense, I do, because I don't know if you have children, but I have kids, and I just, I don't feel like this is going anywhere soon. Star Wars is always going to be a huge pop culture, biggest fandom thing. So I want to be able to give them something that's different. Because I mean, I've read some investment articles and talking to some folks, and we were talking about Legos. I mean, like, Legos that's real money. It truly is, and people buy them. Like,
Yeah.
there's whole, like you were talking about your tub with just miscellaneous pieces. I had one of them. It wasn't Star Wars Legos, but from my kids, and I put it on the marketplace. And this guy reached out to me, and here I come to find out there's like a big community events where people get together and they bring their whatever they build, like an amusement park, a
Yeah.
Ferris wheel, and it's
Yeah.
like, are you kidding me? It's like, oh no, you never heard of this? It was just blew my mind.
Yeah. I mean, collecting Legos, that goes back to like the nerdiness of
Yeah,
the kids that played with Legos now are the engineers of today, and they're just making a lot of money. So specifically, I remember I was a fan of the pirate Lego sets, right? And although they've recreated a couple of those, if you search out the original pirate series in their original box, man, that goes for hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
man,
Uh,
man.
for those. And yes, they're definitely an investment,
Yeah.
but you factor in inflation and all that. I don't know if it's something that you'd like want to put your retirement in.
Oh no, well,
uh,
right.
yeah, you could definitely make your money back. I collect. We talked offline. How we're both a big fan of racing, right?
Yeah.
Well, Lego makes a Speed Champion collection of certain cars and that, and I don't take them out of the box. I get them signed by some of the drivers when I go to races,
That's
and
cool.
those Lego sets. I mean, they're really cool. They're nice box aesthetic, and you can put them in the background on display.
Yep.
So I collect some of those, the Porsches, the Audis, that I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah, that it's cool. Yeah, I didn't mean, I know. Yeah. It's funny. It's just to try to think, and my kids come down here and like, Dad, what are we gonna do with all this stuff? I'm like, well, I enjoy it, So hopefully one day they'll appreciate it. And give them
Are your kids big Star Wars fans, or not so much?
not really. I mean, my boys are 14 and 12, and then the little one's 7, and then my oldest is 20.
Okay.
Yeah, and none of them are really big into it, especially the kids nowadays. They like Fortnite and like Call of Duty, and they're all into that. That's their whole thing. It's not like, our generation and how we grew up, with movies and cartoons and good stuff. So, but yeah, a little bit they are. The Mandalorian, my wife and I watch that, and we got them to kind of sit down with us from time to time, but they'd rather be, Fortnite it up. So.
Okay. Yeah, I think you might be stuck with that collection behind you for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love the power of the Force stuff. That just brings me right back to being a kid and playing with it. And how you were saying earlier about some of your items. But
yeah, I have a tub of those as well, probably at my parents' house. But I remember my little brother had the Millennium Falcon carrying case, and he'd just stuff all the action figures in there. I was partial to the expanded universe ones, like the Dark Empire that had the 3D play set that you like the box itself, the board of it would like expand into this 3D diorama, and
I've seen
that
them,
was really cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. And back to the point of Star Wars, yeah, it's made a big impact on my life as well. it's brought me to enjoy and meeting guys like you, which I'm really excited for, and making friends. So now I want to ask you a couple of fun questions.
Okay.
All right. So if you could be a character in Star Wars, what type of character would you be?
Well, I'd have to go back to my Star Wars Combine days. And if people don't know what Star Wars Combine, it was the first MMO that you could get even before Star Wars Galaxies. So I think just anything with like a bounty hunter or a smuggler, anybody with your own ship that you'd be able to fly around the galaxy, kind of explore places. Because basically that's all the game was. It was a very rudimentary, computer game that you'd plot a course. As long as you didn't fly into a sun, like you didn't die.
Yeah.
But you could explore all the planets, and they had all the expanded universe ships and planets and space stations and that. So I think just anything where I had my own ship, I'd be happy in that position.
Okay, good, interesting. What about your name? What would your character's name be?
So I'd have to go to it would depend a lot on the species, right? So I think I was a Trandoshan. There was a period of time where you could change your species, and that was a big deal because every species had different attributes that they were
better at.
Better at. Like if you were a Hutt, you wouldn't be able to fly a ship or anything like that. So no one was a Hutt, but I guess you could be a crime lord and organize, some of the factions. But it was a Trandoshan, and I think it was my name spelled backwards with an extra S and a K or something like that.
That's cool.
Because they always had Esk and K, like Kradosk, who was like the bounty hunter guild leader, Boska's dad, and then you had Bosk, which is kind of spelled similar. So try to keep in keeping with that theme. I think something similar to my name with an backwards with an extra S and a K at the end.
I like it. I dig it. What about your favorite lightsaber color?
I like orange. Orange is underused one. I think it was used in the Dark Forces games a little bit, but not much else. So
yeah,
I think pick orange.
You're right. Interesting. So what side of Star Wars really intrigues you the most? Like, do you like the Jedi and the Force, or you like the space battles and the ships?
I like the space battles and the ships. I also just like the general factions of the galaxy, the Hapens. You have the corporate sector authority. You have all these imperial warlords, the Pentastar alignment. You have just the different groups and how they've evolved over time. You get into the legacy of the Force. You have the Corellian Confederation, the Galactic Alliance. You have the Imperial Remnant, and then you have Admiral Dalla's faction. That's not really the Imperial Remnant. You have the Mandalorians. I find that fascinating, the dynamic between Black Sun and all these
all
these different organizations.
Factions.
I feel like there needed to be an essential guide to Star Wars organizational factions.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I want to get some more of them essential guides. I know you were mentioning them because it helps a lot try to piece things together, and I commend them guys that put them together because it really truly helps. Because you said, there's a lot, and
there's so much, and you'd be surprised how many individual insignias and individual designs they've created through the lore and all that. And I feel like that isn't documented in one place. It's in a lot of different areas, and that's one of the essential guides that they were missing. I felt like they could have done a lot of new essential guides.
Oh, for sure.
But that's one of them that I wish would have been made.
Cool. Real quick, I just want to mention I had Mr. Brian Borg on from the Twin Suns, and I forgot to ask him those fun questions I asked you, and we were emailing, talking, and I asked him, and he's like, "Oh, I had it all ready for you too," and I don't know how I forgot, because it's just kind of, I enjoy hearing that, and it's fun. So I wanted to, he would be a Jedi pilot, and his character name would be Jace Reldon. And the Reldon was
very specific.
Yeah, he was right on point here with me. And that the Reldon was a name he used in back in his RPG days, and then it's a character he's been kind of writing a book, so it's really cool. And his saber color would be silver or green. So I just wanted to put that out there because I feel bad that I forgot to ask him that. them, because it's just fun, little fun stuff to throw in there, and I'm always
Yeah.
curious to hear what somebody's name would be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it was fascinating what he was saying about the billboard and the behind the scenes, the organizational
Yeah.
aspect of that. Because I wasn't that big into social media at that point, so I felt like, man, I really missed the boat on being a part of Twin Suns, and I'm very grateful for everything he did over the years.
Oh, yeah.
It's led us
Absolutely.
to a much better place than we would have been otherwise. So very grateful to
Yeah.
him for that.
Yeah, they turned that whole thing into a great, amazing thing that they do for kids and stuff. And yeah, I was honored to talk with him and Dylan too. Besides, it's great. So yeah, is there any plugs or anything that you want to get out there, Scott, that you want to get off your chest or mentioned or?
No, I don't think so. I don't even want to plug my channel. My channel is it's so small. I got like 2 videos.
Nah, well,
I just enjoy talking Star Wars with other fans, especially Expanded Universe. Any questions they might have, I'd be happy to answer to the best of my ability. I don't know everything. There's people more knowledgeable than me, but I just love talking Star Wars, man.
yeah,
Especially with the CCG and that aspect, and just collecting the promos, which Christopher Nelson does a much better job than I do on that. But I like following in his footsteps to the extent I can.
Yeah, he's sure got a great collection, and he's pretty knowledgeable. But Scott, I'm telling you, just from me listening to you on some of the podcasts that you've been on and recently, it's like you're knowledgeable yourself, sir. And I was impressed, and it's like I want to talk to you. You seem like a genuine guy, very down to earth, and I've even seen you're always when some of the fellow podcasters that we listen to, I see in the live chats, and you're right on point, asking questions and so polite, and you got a good persona about you, man. I appreciate all that.
Appreciate those kind words. Thanks, Stevie.
Yeah, no, for real. I'm just glad that we somehow got in touch. It's just great, this daisy chain events, and you mentioned that other gentleman that you want me to talk with that had a podcast, and
yeah.
Oh, go
we
ahead.
can talk more about that online. Very last point, if we have time, I can do another pack opening for Star Wars CCG for Dagobah. I did one of these on Brennan's channel, and I didn't get what I was looking for. So we're hoping for a Yoda or a Son of Skywalker in this. This is a new pack. We're burning money by opening this, but hey, it's a good cause on your channel. I'll do it in front of the camera this time because I kind of messed it up last time. But
well, here we go. If he gets the Yoda, we're gonna sell it and split the funds. No,
we'll get a new microphone for my future podcast appearance. So we got Star Destroyer Launch Bay here. That's, first card. We have a creature, a Bogwing Dagobah creature.
Nice.
We have 3,720 to 1 Dark Side Effect. We have an Astromech Translator device. We have They'd Be Crazy to Follow Us, and a Used Interrupt, light side. We have an Imperial here, Lieutenant Commander Arden. Okay.
Cool.
Dagobah Swamp location. This is a light side. And Wars Not Make One Great. We're almost to the rare here. That's the second to last one.
Fingers crossed.
And we have Han's Toolkit, which is actually a pretty good card there. That makes the Millennium Falcon much better. It says use 1 force to deploy on one of your characters' vehicle starships for free to the Millennium Falcon or Han. While aboard a vehicle or starship, you may switch. You may use 1 force to cancel any interrupt or effect which targets that vehicle or starship. So very good to keep the Millennium Falcon intact for your Star Wars CCG game. So that was a decent pack. So I'm happy I opened that.
Good.
Didn't get my money back, but close to it.
Do you keep them all in a binder then? I would assume.
Yeah, I have several binders here. Tons of these. These are Z Folio LX. So they're 4. 4 on each page across. So have several of these, just a ton of them with all the collection, light side, dark side. These are dark side characters.
Very cool.
Probably terrible glare on there, but you get the idea.
Yeah. No, I the card collecting days, I remember having that. And that's cool. That's cool. Are you trying to collect the whole set, I would assume?
So it's pretty hard to collect everything. I have close to all the cards, but the price has just shot up in
Sure.
recent years.
Yeah.
I've bought steadily over the years, and it used to be a couple of years ago you could buy every card for about $3,000.
Wow.
Not every version of every card, because like the foils, the alternate arts,
Yep.
they go for more. But now I think it would be a lot more to get at least one version of every card from the CCG, all the sets. I think
Yeah.
it would be a lot more than $3,000.
Hmm. Well, I appreciate you opening that up on the channel, man. That was very cool. And
Yeah.
real quick, I know you're a supporter of this as well as I am, but Legends Con,
Oh
I
yes.
got
Where's my sticker? I had it here.
yeah,
Oh
I
no,
got the bookmark too, but it's not on me.
I had it. I don't know where it went.
Oh
I
boy.
got to find it.
You're gonna be freaking out. He's like, I gotta go. Nice talking to you, Steve. Later.
Got to order another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
It'll be interesting to see what Legends Con turns out to be. I hope it's successful.
Me too.
I'll just say that. I'll leave it at that. I hope
Yeah.
it's successful.
Yeah, I am as well. If I could go, I would go, but I can't. So be it. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on, man. I know you got more stories to tell, and we could probably sit here for another 2 hours and just keep rapping. But like I said, man, I'm pleased. You're a genuine guy, very knowledgeable. I know you said your channel, yeah, you got a couple videos, but it's cool that you're showing and do more because I like them. I know you got some NASCAR Heat videos on there as well, and some Jedi Academy playing. So
Oh yeah,
that's
I could get into
yeah,
NASCAR Ignition and the debacle that came out with, but hopefully we'll get a 2023 update where NASCAR Ignition is actually playable. But that's a different story for a different time.
yeah, yes. I used to be in a NASCAR sim racing league online.
Oh nice.
Yeah, that was a
I
lot.
iRacing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't invest the rig. I prefer the old school like controller thing, but that's very very hard to do nowadays, man.
Yeah.
Everybody has their simulator set up now.
Yeah, I
So.
don't have nothing like crazy like some of them guys you can spend some money on, but yeah, it's been a pleasure hearing your story. It's from starting from the books, getting into it. That's cool. Rare. You know what I'm saying? So that was fun, and how you collected and your journey. And I appreciate you sharing your thoughts and opinions of how you felt with the 2014 situation. I I can just imagine. But there you have it, folks.
Yep.
Mr. Scott Johnson showing off some of his stuff, opening up that pack. When he gets that Yoda, though, we're gonna have to. I'll give you my address.
Right.
But the promo posters are cool too, man.
Thanks.
And
I appreciate it. It's been great talking with you, Stevie. This has been a great series you've been doing, just documenting everybody's unique journey, their fandom journey, and looking forward to more.
yeah, yes, there'll be more on the way, and I appreciate that, and I'm having fun, and I consider you a friend. And maybe one time we can come on and talk some more, or maybe we can start up one of them the board games there, the Dungeons and Dragons style. I forgot the name of it.
Dark Strider campaign.
Yeah.
We'll have to get that together sometime.
We'll get Marcel going here. But yeah, there you have it, folks. Scott, I hope you like what I'm doing. If you do, please like, subscribe, tell your friends, and until next time, see you soon.